I'm Stephen Monteith, and I'm here to rewrite Star Wars. I did a podcast recently where I talked about how we should respect all the effort that countless people put into making movies like Star Wars, that they have a daunting and often thankless task of trying to make movies that people will actually like in a franchise that's been around for longer than a lot of us have been alive. I don't want to erase anything they've done or pretend that it doesn't count. However, I also did a podcast about how part of the fun of being a fan is the whole interactive quality of it all, of making our own contributions in the form of fan fiction and fan theories and whatnot. Plus, as a writer, I'm always doing at least a little bit of rewriting whenever I watch something. So, consider this my Star Wars fanfic, a reboot of the entire Skywalker saga, episodes 1 through 9. It incorporates elements from the movies as they are now, from the old expanded universe, which is now known as the Legends continuity, from Colin Trevorrow's unused script for Episode 9 entitled Duel of the Fates, and even some of George Lucas's unused ideas for the sequel trilogy. It's quite an amalgamation of ideas, if I do say so myself. Episode 1 begins with Obi-Wan Kenobi, who at this point is a Jedi Knight, and his contact, Dexter Jetster, on Tatooine, taking control of a shipment of slaves that include a young man named Anakin and his mother Shmi. No last names. They're fleeing the Hutts, including a bounty hunter named Jango Fett, but they don't have enough fuel to make it to Coruscant, so they have to hunker down and wait it out. There's plenty of cat and mouse going on as Obi-Wan tries to hide the slaves from Jango and the other bounty hunters, as he contacts Qui-Gon Jinn through the Force. Qui-Gon manages to rescue them, but not before Jango Fett kills Anakin's mother. So sad. They return to Coruscant, where Qui-Gon and the Jedi Council debate whether clones are to blame for the imbalance in the Force. Some people think the imbalance could be due to a resurgence of the Sith. Qui-Gon and other adherents to the will of the living Force claim that it's the strict adherence to the Jedi Code that is causing the imbalance, and that trying to influence the future while ignoring the present moment ignores the will of the Force. In the meantime, the Senate requests the Jedi inspect a cloning facility on Kamino, a world that has requested entry into the Republic. Sheev Palpatine is the senior senator from Naboo, Padme Amidala is the junior senator, and they and the rest of the Senate are debating the creation, the use, and the rights of clones. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan team up once again to lead an investigation on Kamino, while Jedi Prophet Kadan requests that young Anakin be tested to see if he's the one who can restore balance to the Force, according to the ancient prophecy. On Kamino, Qui-Gon is able to read the clone's thoughts, and he senses the influence of the dark side in their creation. He sees Darth Maul in a vision, and he informs the Jedi Council, who inform the Senate, who send a fighting force to try and recover the Jedi. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are fighting their way through a contingent of clones before they finally encounter Darth Maul, who kills Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan manages to escape, and he's eventually rescued and reunited with Anakin, whom the Council has decided should be trained. Master Yoda plans to oversee Anakin's training himself, but Obi-Wan declares that he will do it, hoping to instill the principles of the living force in Anakin in honor of his fallen master. The movie ends with Qui-Gon's funeral. The clone army is considered to be disposable by Maul, who uses them like so many mass-produced droids. Anakin and some other Jedi consider them to be an affront to the Force. He shares his thoughts with Palpatine, who has become the new Chancellor. Taking note of the young Jedi's prejudice and seeing the principle at play in how the Jedi Order indoctrinates youth, Palpatine decides to build his Republic army from conscripts, telling Darth Maul, who has conquered the world of Mandalore at this point and rules his Shadow Collective there, that the benefit of an army comprised of conscripts is you can indoctrinate them from a young age, force their families to support them, and thereby make all of them complicit in your actions, ultimately engendering more loyalty from free will than from force. So while Maul attacks unaligned systems, making them call upon the Republic for help, Palpatine awaits these systems with conditions that they'll need to contribute to the army and the navy he's building to protect the galaxy. In the meantime, the Jedi are seeking a way to draw out Darth Maul. He's a Sith, and if there's one thing a Sith needs more than anything else, it's an apprentice. They discuss whom Maul would be most likely to take on as an apprentice, and a lot of people feel that Anakin would be the best candidate, arguing that he's the chosen one who will bring balance to the Force. And if he can get close enough to Maul, he can kill him and fulfill his destiny. Obi-Wan is hesitant to allow his apprentice to undertake a mission like this, as he's not yet a Jedi, and Maul may already have an apprentice. Anakin is eager to prove himself, however, believing that such an act would guarantee him the rank of Jedi Knight, as well as bringing a swift end to the war. The Council have discussed how best to entice Maul into contacting Anakin, including using Maul's criminal ties to set up a meeting. The Shadow Collective is connected to various criminal organizations like Black Sun, Pike Syndicate, and Crimson Dawn, so there are plenty of options. Obi-Wan talks to Senator Bail Organa, chairman of the Intelligence Committee, about arranging for Maul to receive word that Anakin is out of favor with the Jedi Council because of his desire for revenge over the death of his mother. Anakin, meanwhile, has grown closer to Chancellor Palpatine and the now senior senator from Naboo, Padme Amidala, and confides in them his intention to hunt down Maul by pretending to be his apprentice. Palpatine, of course, wants to see if Anakin can really be turned to the dark side, and tells Maul to dangle Jango Fett in front of Anakin to see if he'll take revenge. If he does, then Maul is to contact Anakin and bring him to Mandalore. If Anakin merely arrests Fett, then Anakin needs to be eliminated. Maul is concerned that Palpatine might want to make Anakin his new Sith apprentice, but is also curious about taking Anakin on as his own apprentice, replacing Palpatine as the new Sith Lord. Since everyone wants the mission to succeed, it's pretty easy to get Anakin to face Jango Fett, who is, by the way, unaware that Anakin was the slave that he chased all those years ago for the Hutts. Maul hires Fett to capture Anakin. Anakin suspects that this may be his ticket to meet Maul, but he also suspects a trap. He takes his revenge on Fett, rationalizing that doing so will be more convincing than simply being captured by him. Obi-Wan is disturbed by his apprentice's actions, but it works, and Maul's criminal contacts tell Anakin that he wants a meeting in a neutral location. They choose Tatooine, where Anakin was born and where the Hutts still hold control, making it less likely that the Shadow Collective would have a presence there. Obi-Wan doesn't want Anakin going alone, but he doesn't tell him that he's going there separately as backup. Anakin and Maul meet near the Palace of Jabba, near the Sarlacc pit. Maul tells Anakin he senses the dark side in him, and he lays out what he sees as the weaknesses of the Jedi and of the Galactic Republic, seeing if he can get Anakin to agree with him. Obi-Wan watches from afar, senses that Anakin is being persuaded, but he doesn't want to intervene just yet. When Maul mentions that he knows someone who can complete Anakin's training, Anakin and Obi-Wan both realize that Maul is, in fact, an apprentice and not the master. Anakin tries to get him to tell him the name of his master, but Maul turns to leave. Anakin attacks, and they battle around the edges of the Sarlacc pit. Obi-Wan races towards them, joining in the fight, during which Anakin cuts Maul in half and watches him tumble into the Sarlacc. Anakin and Obi-Wan return to report to the Jedi Council. Palpatine, meanwhile, has been watching the whole thing via Force vision, and is very pleased as he sees Anakin embracing the dark side for a second time to attack and kill an enemy, which is contrary to the Jedi Code. Two debates are raging in the highest levels of the Republic. With Darth Maul dead, Palpatine and his loyalist generals and admirals are using ever more aggressive tactics to eliminate the clone and criminal forces. In the process, they're absorbing more and more systems into the Republic under the wartime conditions that Palpatine had imposed in the past. Senators Amidala and Organa argue that there's no longer any need for such conditions, and that their historically peaceful planets of Alderaan and Naboo, among many others, are eager to return to peacetime conditions. Palpatine and his allies resist such calls, though, claiming there will always be a need for a galactic army and navy, and that every system which benefits needs to contribute. While Palpatine becomes more and more totalitarian, rebellions begin to take place on planets such as Corellia, Kashyyyk, and even Coruscant. This, of course, only reinforces Palpatine's argument that his forces are necessary in order to quell such rebellions. Amidala and the others begin to support the rebels, which makes them targets. Anakin, still technically Obi-Wan's apprentice, though it's pretty much just a name only at this point, is scheduled to take the trials to become a Jedi Knight, but he puts it off so that he can request to be allowed to head up Senator Amidala's protection detail. They aren't married. Their relationship is much more low-key, though they do have an attraction for each other. The Jedi Council, are uneasy about his future, as always, although the killing of Darth Maul is seen by many, including the Jedi Prophet Kadan, as evidence that Anakin is the chosen one, since he's the first Jedi to kill a Sith in 1,000 years. Meanwhile, he's been receiving visions from Palpatine, not knowing they're from him, as well as speaking with him in person. At every opportunity, Palpatine is influencing him towards the dark side of the Force. Anakin's becoming more passionate, studying the dark side in secret, believing the Jedi Code to be too rigid, rejecting aspects of the Force, and believing that he can form a new gray philosophy, one that embraces both the light and the dark. Kadan is his ally in this, and is cast out from the Jedi Order when it's learned of by the Council. And many Jedi are troubled by the schism that starts to form. Meanwhile, Palpatine still gathers more power to himself, and Bail Organa has enlisted Obi-Wan to gather rebel cell leaders to get them to form an alliance. Amidala is supposed to meet with them, but she can't do so as long as Anakin is watching her. She tries to talk to him to see how committed he is to Palpatine and his rule, how committed he is to the Jedi. They have a night of passion together, after which Padme leaves for Mustafar to meet with the rebels. Anakin follows her there, where he sees Obi-Wan and Organa as well, declaring, "So it's treason then." He lashes out at Amidala, and Obi-Wan fights him while Organa escapes with her and the rebel leaders. Anakin and Obi-Wan fight, much the same as they did in Revenge of the Sith, only this time Obi-Wan doesn't leave him to die. He brings him back to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant for medical treatment. He says to him, "You killed Amidala," believing that it would be best for her to go into hiding so she won't be a target any longer, and can do better work behind the scenes of the rebellion than she can in the increasingly irrelevant Senate. Meanwhile, the Jedi Order is in complete chaos. Some of them are loyal to the Republic, meaning Palpatine. Some still cling to the belief that Anakin is the chosen one, despite his attack on Obi-Wan. Some leave to form the Grey Jedi with Kadan, and the Force is still out of balance, leaving the Council with no idea of what to do. Palpatine contacts Anakin via the Force, asking him if this is the order to which he's willing to devote the rest of his life, or if he's ready to embrace a new destiny as a Lord of the Sith and restore order to the galaxy. Anakin, having been told this whole time that his destiny is to restore balance, and believing that the Jedi are fundamentally out of balance because of their strict adherence to the Code, pledges to serve the Sith Lord. He leaves the Temple Hospital, meets with the Sith Lord, who reveals himself as Darth Sidious, and anoints Anakin as Darth Vader. Obi-Wan has followed him and observed it, and informs the Jedi Council that Palpatine is the Sith Lord they've been looking for, and that Anakin is his new apprentice. Several members of the Council go to arrest Palpatine, Obi-Wan declines because he can't bear to face his former apprentice again. When Palpatine sees that the Jedi are coming, he takes advantage of the opportunity to send an entire legion of his best troops to attack the Jedi Temple in their absence. Obi-Wan is the only one to survive the attack. Palpatine and Vader face off against the Jedi Masters. They take all of them out except Yoda, who escapes and rendezvous with Obi-Wan, Organa, and Amidala. They all agree that they all need to basically go into hiding. Organa stays in the Senate, while Amidala goes underground. But she tells them that she's pregnant and that Anakin is the father. Palpatine, meanwhile, declares that all the Jedi are outlaws, and he proclaims himself Emperor. It's been almost 20 years since Palpatine declared himself Emperor and his new apprentice, Darth Vader, began hunting down all the rebels, especially the Jedi. Bail Organa has resigned from the Senate under suspicion, but he still has friends who help him uncover the location of a secret shipyard where the Emperor is said to be building a massive weapon that could make any rebellion a useless gesture. The rebels are prepared to send scouts to confirm the existence, location, and nature of the weapon. But first, Bail must recruit an old friend. His adopted daughter, Leia, hires a smuggler named Han Solo to take her to Tatooine to find Obi-Wan Kenobi and his new apprentice. They're living there under the names Ben and Luke Skywalker. Remember, Anakin didn't have the last name, not in this continuity. Han doesn't want to go to Tatooine because he still owes Jabba the Hutt. But he's the only smuggler Leia knows, and she needs to go discreetly and bring Ben and Luke back discreetly. She promises to pay him well, half up front and half when they make it back to Alderaan. While she travels out to the Dune Sea to find Obi-Wan, Han meets Boba Fett in the Mos Eisley Cantina, speaking with Jabba via holocom. Jabba tells Boba Fett to take the money Han got up front, and tells Han to deliver the rest after he finishes his run, or he'll be face down in the Sarlacc's guts for 1,000 years. Luke has been training to be a Jedi since he was young, knowing the truth about his father and the demise of the Jedi Order, hoping to one day be able to redeem his father. They all board the Millennium Falcon and set out for Alderaan, only to receive news over the Imperial Holonet that all traffic in and out of Alderaan has been frozen. The Imperial Senate has been disbanded, and Bail Organa has been arrested. Obi-Wan counsels meeting up with the Rebel Alliance to plan their next move, but Leia wants to stage a rescue, unwilling to let her father be tortured for all the information that he has about the Alliance. Yeah. Han, of course, just wants to be paid and to forget about all this, but Leia convinces him that Corellia and Kashyyyk, two of the first systems to rebel, would continue to suffer if the Emperor is allowed to remain in power. Also, she promises to pay him triple. They divert course to Coruscant. Han smuggles them onto the planet, and Obi-Wan introduces them to some of his own contacts, including Dex, who helped them plan a prison break for Bail Organa. They manage to rescue him, but Obi-Wan has to fight Darth Vader in order to give them enough time to escape. Bail leads them to the Alliance, who by now have confirmed the location of the shipyard and that the weapon has not yet been completed. They form a fleet of ships to attack the yard to try and keep it from becoming operational. Han leaves to go pay Jabba, but Leia tells him to spread the word about the Emperor's plans. The rebel fleet arrives at the shipyard. They have a big space battle. They blow up the Death Star. But as they're hyper-jumping out, Vader's ship jumps in. And just like Obi-Wan did on Coruscant, Luke stays behind to give Leia and the rebels a chance to escape. The movie ends with Luke and the Star Destroyer brig being taken to Coruscant. This movie starts on Tatooine, with Han paying off Jabba in full, plus a little extra, and getting the mark cleared from his head. This is happening concurrently with the assault on the uncompleted Death Star, by the way, from the end of the last movie. Han's invited to stay at Jabba's palace, but after his experiences with Leia and the others, he finds he's just no longer comfortable around Jabba and his entourage. He returns to Mos Eisley, where he once again encounters Boba Fett, who expresses regret that he never got the chance to drag Han in for the bounty. Han talks with him about their pasts, asking Boba if he, as a Mandalorian, ever gets tired of working for gangsters like Jabba, if he ever wants to do something more important for the galaxy. He asks him, "What if you knew that Vader and the Emperor were building a weapon that could devastate a whole world? Wouldn't you want to do something about it?" Boba says his father Jango tried to go up against Vader and was killed for it, so he stays as far away from the Empire as possible, and that means working for the Hutts. Han tells him sooner or later the Empire will destroy everything, including the Hutts. Boba says he sounds like a rebel. Han says, "I guess I do," and he heads to his ship to fly back to Yavin and the rebel base. He gets there in time to help them evacuate, as Leia and the others realize that they could have been tracked and are trying to get away before any Imperials can descend upon them. Leia and her adopted father fly out with Han. She tells him that Luke has been captured by Vader. They escape, but on their way out they have to fight their way through the Imperial Navy, who did indeed show up. While this is happening, Vader is taking Luke to Coruscant. He questions him in the brig of his Star Destroyer, asking him about Obi-Wan and his training. He tells Luke that Obi-Wan is truly dead, and Luke senses the conflict in Vader over it. He tells Vader that he is his son, which Vader claims is impossible. Luke tells him to search his feelings, that he knows it to be true. Han and Chewie take Leia and Bail to Cloud City, where his old friend Lando offers to let them hide for a while. Bail tells Leia that there is one more Jedi Master in the galaxy that might be able to get to help them. Yoda, who fled to the planet Dagobah after the fall of the Republic. While they plan their next move, Lando's people find a tracking device on the Millennium Falcon. Han realizes Boba placed it there while on Tatooine, hoping probably to collect the bounty on Rebel Alliance members. In other words, the Imperials followed Han to Yavin, not the Rebels, and that They're likely now following him to Cloud City. Lando's pissed, of course. Doesn't want to risk his whole city just for Han's sake or the rebellion's. Leia tells him to call the Imperials and rat them out, that they'll be long gone before the Imperials arrive, but it's too late for that. Lando loads the tracker onto a decoy ship, sends it off in one direction, while the Falcon jumps to Dagobah. Vader's ship has arrived at Coruscant, and he and Luke are on a shuttle heading straight for the Imperial Palace. Luke crashes the ship, and he and Vader fight throughout the underbelly of Imperial Center. As they fight, Vader is faced with visions from his past, including his lost love, Padme. Luke tells him, "Your thoughts betray you, Father. I can tell you what happened to her, to my mother." Vader hesitates, knowing that he was never in favor of genocide like the Emperor is, but unable to simply turn his back on him. Luke offers to join forces, to let them tell each other the truth as they know it, and to find their own path forward. Leia, meanwhile, is on Dagobah searching for Yoda. Han finds him first, but doesn't realize that it's him. When Leia and Bail catch up, Bail recognizes Yoda, but is shocked to see him so old and weak. He makes the case for Yoda to return to help the rebellion, but Yoda is discouraged after having watched the Jedi Order collapse. He spent the last 2 decades pondering the reasons for it, trying to find a way to move forward, perhaps by amending the Jedi Code so that a new order can form that won't be so fragile in the face of Sith oppression. Leia says if Yoda won't come with them, then they may as well return to the rebellion on their own. Yoda makes the offer to let Leia stay so that she can train with him to become a Jedi. She's shocked to learn that she has the Force. Han isn't willing to just leave her behind in the swamp, but she convinces him she'll be okay, that he needs to get her father back to the rebellion, and that she's willing to stay behind. The movie ends back on Coruscant, with Vader reporting to the Emperor that the young Jedi escaped and he's still looking for him. It's a lie, though. He and Luke are in a room together, with Vader asking Luke where Padme is. Episode 6 opens on Dagobah, with Leia still training under Master Yoda. He's been teaching her the basics of the Force, the mechanics, the principles, but he doesn't instruct her in the code itself, beyond that it should be used for knowledge and defense only. Han returns to update her on the state of the Alliance, telling her that more systems are feeling bolder about speaking up, while his smuggling contacts are at least willing to consider selling ships and weapons to the Alliance. Leia says they can't be trusted after what happened with Boba Fett, and Han agrees, but he says that he trusts Lando at least. He also lets her know about a rumor that Darth Vader has disappeared, that nobody knows where he is. Leia has spent hours every day meditating on the past ever since she learned that she had the power to use the Force, putting all kinds of clues together. And she finally has to ask Yoda directly if Darth Vader is her father. He tells her that Vader is her father, and the truth about why Vader left the Jedi Order and became a Sith. Yoda dies, and Leia returns with Han to the Rebel Alliance, where there's news that the shipyard they destroyed was not the only one where a Death Star was being constructed. They fear a trap and are reluctant to commit their few remaining ships to another full-scale assault. But there may be another way to confirm it. Leia tries to contact Luke using the Force, hoping that he's still alive. Luke answers, saying that he's with Vader. Leia is stunned. Luke tells her that Vader is his father. Leia says that Vader is her father as well, that Yoda told her while she was on Dagobah. Luke says Vader wants to know where their mother is. Leia knows, but she won't tell him unless Vader can confirm the location of the second Death Star and help them destroy it. Vader agrees, sensing that the time has come for him to overthrow the Emperor one way or another. The rebels, Mon Mothma in particular, are not willing to take Vader's word for it. And Bail isn't willing to expose Amidala after all these years of keeping her hidden. But Leia reasons that if anyone can help turn Vader against the Emperor, it would be her. Leia reunites with her real mother. Han takes them to rendezvous with Luke and Vader, and they get the location of the second Death Star shipyard. It's too late to attack it, though, because the Death Star has already been deployed. The Emperor is at the helm, and he's traveling to every suspected rebel base and shipyard, destroying them as he goes. The Alliance has only one hope: to destroy it. Vader is willing to help them, but Leia is not convinced that he won't just assume the throne himself. She and the rebels want his word that they won't stand in the way of their rebuilding the Republic. Vader was never interested in ruling, not any more than he was in genocide, certainly. He's only interested in two things: rebuilding the family he always believed was lost, and learning what his true destiny is. He contacts the Emperor and tells him he finally captured not only Luke Skywalker, but also his twin sister and their mother. The Emperor suspects a trap, of course, but instructs Vader to bring them all to him on the Death Star, which is right now orbiting the planet Alderaan. Vader's ship has a homing beacon. The rebel fleet is supposed to follow behind them, giving them enough time to disable the Death Star's defenses from the inside first. Vader's ship lands. He and his family, along with Han and a force of rebels disguised as stormtroopers, fight their way through the Death Star's interior, some of them going to disable the shield and super laser, while Vader, Luke, and Leia go to confront the Emperor. Lando and Chewie are flying the Falcon as part of the rebel fleet. This plays out pretty much the way the space battle above Endor did in Return of the Jedi, with the Death Star are fully completed, though, capable of launching its own ships, in addition to the super laser, of course. The rebels seem to have no chance of destroying the Death Star before the main Imperial Navy can arrive. The fight between the Emperor and Vader and his children, by the way, isn't going very well at all. Palpatine is more than capable of holding his own against the three of them. He taunts them with all their failures over the years, and now the ultimate failure of the rebellion to stop him from gaining unlimited power. Deep within the Death Star, Amidala and Han are setting the main power reactor to overload, hoping it will at least permanently disable it. The explosion works just a little better than they'd hoped, and they race back to their ship, using the comms to tell everyone they need to evacuate now. Vader, meanwhile, up in the throne room, destroys the big picture window and drags the Emperor out into space, where he's finally able to impale him with his lightsaber. The Emperor blows up in a Force explosion. Luke and Leia are sheltered in the turbo lift, but they know they can't make it all the way to the docking bay before the ship will need to take off. So Leia contacts Han via comm and tells him to fly around to the throne room window. Luke and Leia jump out into space. The ship catches them, and they escape just as the Death Star explodes beneath them. They recover Vader's body from the vacuum and give him a Jedi funeral on Naboo, where Amidala can finally return openly, and where she and Luke and Leia stay to learn about each other. This is where Episode 6 ends. Episode 7. Another 20 years have passed. The will of the Force has always been invoked by the Jedi, but never understood. When Yoda exiled himself on Dagobah, it wasn't out of shame or fear, but out of a desire to meditate on how the Jedi Order could have fallen so far and misunderstood the Force so deeply. He sought answers, and he kept journals, which Luke and Leia have been examining this whole time, hoping to not make the same mistakes when they start training new Jedi. The only things they know for certain are that the light side and the dark side do exist, and that one cannot go against the will of the Force without risking the balance. They try to be more mindful of the living Force than of predicting their destinies and roles within the Force. Feeling the Force around you, letting it control your actions more than making it obey your commands, is how they choose to move forward with their efforts. Han and Leia's son, Kylo Organa Solo, is a Force user who is tempted by the dark side and confused about how his mother and uncle can be so sure the dark side is bad if even the Jedi can fall. He's been receiving visions from Supreme Leader Snoke, as are other trainees at Luke's academy. Leia wants to find Snoke and put an end to him, but she's Chancellor Amidala's daughter, so she can't openly attack a foreign head of state, obviously, without risking a galactic war. So she and Han start to contact the resistance within the First Order's boundaries, people living under the rule of Snoke who want to secede and join the New Republic. Amidala's upset about Leia's actions. Luke is unsure if it's the will of the Force, but Leia is an old-school rebel, and she can't stand by while people are being oppressed. Han hasn't actually been a smuggler in years, but he still knows plenty of tricks, and goes undercover in First Order territory, smuggling weapons and such to Resistance fighters, while Leia meets in secret with leaders like Admiral Holdo on remote planets. This is where the movie actually begins, with a meeting between Leia and Lor San Tekka on Jakku. Her escort is a hotshot Resistance pilot named Poe Dameron, who covers for her escape when Captain Phasma arrives and orders the slaughter of the village where they're meeting. Lor San Tekka is killed, Poe Dameron is captured and taken for interrogation, while Leia escapes with the droid BB-8, looking for a place to hide. She comes across a young woman, Rey, who agrees to hide her. Poe, up on Phasma's ship, meets Finn and escapes in pretty much the same ways in The Force Awakens, though without Kylo present because he hasn't quite joined the Knights of Ren yet. In fact, at this point, Kylo is still at Luke's Jedi Academy, where Luke is experimenting with allowing the Force to take total control of him, move him like a puppet, basically. Unfortunately, this leads to Luke drawing his lightsaber and almost killing Kylo in his sleep. He regains control of himself, but not before Kylo wakes and fights back, screaming, "Traitor." The Jedi Academy is burned down. Kylo flees to find Snoke, someone he believes can protect him and teach him better than his treacherous uncle can. Meanwhile, back on Jakku, Leia tries to find a way to contact Han, or anyone, so that she won't be captured and risk war between the First Order and the New Republic. Finn and Poe crash on Jakku and are reunited with Leia. They try to escape, taking Rey with them, as Leia can tell that Rey is Force-sensitive. Rey just wants to wait for her parents, but Leia promises that with the Force, she can help Rey find them faster. Poe flies them off Jakku in a stolen freighter. They go in search of Han at Maz Kanata's place, where Han is known to meet with other smugglers. But the First Order follows them there. Han shows up in time to help them, but Rey is captured by Phasma after she notices Rey displaying Force sensitivity. Phasma realizes that Snoke would be interested in this particular person, so she takes her to Snoke at the headquarters of the Ren Order, where Kylo has just arrived to pledge his allegiance. Leia knows that she owes Rey a debt and wants to go rescue her, but she can't attack all the Knights of Ren without Luke, and Luke is suddenly nowhere to be found. Poe rallies his resistance buddies, saying that he'll help rescue Rey. Finn, who just wants to get as far away from the First Order as possible, knows that he also owes Leia and Poe a debt, so he agrees to help them. They plan the attack with Poe and his squadron flying cover while Han, Leia, Chewie, and Finn infiltrate the House of Ren. They find Rey and are about to escape when Han encounters Kylo, who kills him. Leia and the others escape, leaving the House of Ren burning just like the Jedi Academy. Luke has taken angst over the will of the Force to the next level. While under its influence, he tried to kill his nephew, so now he has cut himself off from the Force entirely while he decides what to do next. In doing so, he missed that Kylo killed Han and that Leia has been trying to contact him and that there's a new Force user, Rey, on the scene. Leia trains Rey in the ways of the Force while they seek her brother, but they also can't forget their commitment to the Resistance, especially since Admiral Holdo is under attack at the Resistance base on Crate by the forces of General Hux of the First Order. Hux has an interdictor cruiser, which keeps the ever-shrinking Resistance fleet from jumping to hyperspace. On the other hand, The Krite base's shielding is very strong, and Poe's fighters have really swift fighter craft. So the siege is something of a standstill until more First Order ships can arrive. Leia's flying around with Finn and Chewie and Rose Tico, trying to get more support fighters to come to the aid of the Resistance. Rey has had a vision of an island with strange creatures on it. Porgs. She sees porgs in her vision. After identifying what these porgs are and their planet of origin in the New Republic's database, she flies out there, not knowing what she'll find. She finds Luke there, of course. He's unwilling to help, even after Rey tells him all that has happened and all that is happening. They have pretty much the same conversations about the Force as they do in The Last Jedi. And Rey keeps trying to find out about her parents, about who she is. And she has the same vision that she had in The Last Jedi. We'll get more into that a little later, though. Meanwhile, Kylo has been conversing with Rey through the Force in pretty much the same way as in The Last Jedi. He tells her why he left the Jedi Academy. Basically, this part of the movie is pretty much the same, except Luke's explanation for his attack was that he was taken over by the Force. Why did the Force want Kylo dead? Because now it's the Knights of Ren who are amplifying the dark side. Kylo isn't some Vader wannabe. He's simply one of the most powerful Force users there is, and very tempted by the dark side. He's tapping into it the same way that Palpatine did once upon a time. And eventually, he'll become just as much of a threat. This is what Luke tells Rey, that the Force can't be trusted because its methods are too direct, too lacking in compassion. When allowed to control our bodies and drive us like speeders, the Force becomes too dangerous. So Luke had to shut himself off before it consumed him entirely. Rey tells him that there are still people out there like herself who need guidance, who need wisdom, who need a teacher, and that if teachers like Luke shut themselves off from the galaxy, then teachers like Snoke will rise in his place. Meanwhile, the Resistance cannot hold out forever. The First Order is going to get more ships to reinforce the siege of Krayt. In the base, Admiral Holdo and Poe Dameron are increasingly at odds about how to fight the First Order and escape. It seems, they have to destroy the interdictor cruiser so that Resistance transports can make the jump to hyperspace. But the interdictor is too well guarded. Poe wants to lead a suicide bombing run, but that could eliminate all their fighters, leaving the transports with no cover to make the escape. Holdo's plan is to crash her own cruiser into the interdictor, creating an explosion that disorients the other First Order ships. While she's sacrificing herself, Leia lands on Canto Bight, hoping to convince an arms dealer that Han knows to provide fighting ships for the battle. The arms dealer sells her out to the First Order, though. She and Rose and Finn and Chewie are all taken captive and flown to Krayt, where Kylo is also heading. He's been sent there to aid in the siege. Everyone arrives just as the Resistance are beginning to evacuate, with Poe's plan being to take advantage of Holdo's having crashed into the interdictor cruiser to make their escape. But Kylo, who's now on board the ship that's holding Leia and the others prisoner, is in command of the fleet, and he manages to force the Resistance back onto the planet, where he orders a total bombardment of the base. Poe gets ready to go with his original plan, go on a bombing run of Kylo's new command ship. He doesn't know that Leia and the others are on board. Rey arrives in time to stop them from bombing the ship because she has sensed Leia's presence there. And Luke has projected himself onto the bridge of the command ship to distract Kylo, while Leia uses the Force to escape in the Millennium Falcon, which was being kept in the command ship's hangar bay. When Rey sees the Falcon leave the hangar bay, she gives Poe the go-ahead to commence the bombing. Luke's projection disappears as explosions start tearing through the ship. The Resistance transports are able to jump to hyperspace, and Kylo escapes in an escape pod, has to be rescued by other First Order ships. The movie ends with Luke and Kylo both alive, and both separately contacting Leia with the Force. We open the final movie with Kylo being smacked down by Snoke in front of the other Knights of Ren at First Order headquarters, which has replaced the destroyed House of Ren. Snoke tells Kylo he's a pale imitation of Darth Vader, accusing him of allowing Luke to deceive him and Leia to escape. Kylo rejects this, saying he did his best and will kill Luke and Leia just like he killed his father. After he leaves, Ataska, a woman in the Knights of Ren, pledges to cut him down if he fails again. She is sent to oversee General Hux and Captain Phasma as they prepare to launch the Siege of Coruscant, the First Order's retaliation for members of the New Republic helping the Resistance. We cut to Rey practicing with her lightsaber staff, basically a blue-bladed version of Darth Maul's double-bladed saber, and with no hinge in the center. As Rey deflects bolts from various remotes, she keeps getting flashes from her past. Leia halts the practice because she can feel Rey's conflict. She tells her how when she first trained as a Jedi, she also had troubling visions of her father, about whom all she knew at the time was that he was a murderer. Rey wonders if that would be better than knowing nothing about her parents at all. Kylo did fill her head in the last movie with talk about how her parents were nobodies and didn't even want her, something that was seemingly confirmed by the vision she had on Luke's island, the vision where she's simply alone, stretching on into eternity. Leia tells her that fate isn't decided by where we begin, but where we go. Rey asks Leia why Luke still refuses to train her, since he was instrumental in helping them escape Krayt. Leia tells Rey that the Jedi Order during the Old Republic saw many regimes rise and fall on many planets across the galaxy, and that the Empire defeated the Jedi not by challenging them directly as others had tried to do, but by taking advantage of their weaknesses and exploiting their lack of connection to the Force. Luke has sworn, like Yoda did, to not raise a new generation of Jedi until he can understand the will of the Force and how to balance it with the will of all life. Life creates the Force, makes it grow. Midichlorians allow certain people to access the Force, but they also allow the Force to access them. So what is the Force itself? Can we ever understand it? Are some people just pawns of the Force? Do they have a destiny like Anakin once did? Can that destiny be denied or even delayed? These are the questions Luke needs to answer. As Leia tells all this to Rey, we see Luke meditating. We see images from the past movies and of past Force users. Rey asks if she has a destiny, since the Force led Leia to her, or if Kylo has a destiny that led him to Snoke. Leia doesn't know. They arrive at Coruscant, where Leia meets with her mother, Chancellor Amidala, who pretty much says, "I warned you this would happen." Leia says, "I had to help them." Amidala says she was sorry to hear about Han, and that she's considered opening negotiations with the First Order to avert war before it begins in full. Leia tells her that the first thing Snoke would want is all the refugees Coruscant has taken in since the Siege of Crait. Amidala would never allow that. Rey, meanwhile, has gone to reunite with Poe, Finn, and Rose, as they have arrived with more refugees from First Order worlds. They share stories and brief moments of levity before Poe says that he needs to fly out again, not for more refugees, but for a secret mission. They press him for details, and he says that when Lor Santeca was going to meet with Leia, it was because he had information on Supreme Leader Snoke that he never got to give, obviously, before Phasma appeared and killed him. Rey says if Poe's going back to Jakku, then she wants to go as well. Finn and Rose are also both ready for the assignment. Rey goes to tell Leia about it, who tells her to take the Falcon and Chewie with her. They leap out of Coruscant mere moments before Hux's fleet leaps in, with Kylo and Atasca and other Knights of Ren on board. The First Order fleet takes Coruscant by surprise, blocking all communications so they can't call for help. It still takes them a while to penetrate planetary defenses enough to start landing ground troops, led by Phasma and various Knights of Ren, who make their way to the capital. On Jakku, Rey and the others search the desert for Lor Santeca's ship, which was left behind after Phasma killed him. The ship has a log that shows that his route before arriving at Jakku included Kamino, which Chewie recognizes as the world where the attack of the clones began. The First Order isn't known for using clones. Kamino is still outside both the First Order and New Republic boundaries, but they decide that should be their next stop. They send a coded message to Coruscant, not knowing that it's under siege. The message is intercepted by the First Order, but they're not able to decrypt it right away. On Kamino, they discover that the cloning facilities have been pretty much destroyed, but that some still exist, and they're being guarded by clones of Jango Fett. After a protracted battle, they're finally able to enter the facilities, where they find a computer file labeled Snoke, and they realize that Snoke is a clone. but of whom? It's Emperor Palpatine, of course, but they don't learn that yet. Meanwhile, the First Order is just killing the hell out of Coruscant. Leia tries to contact Rey through the Force to warn her not to return. Rey hears the warning and shares with Leia what she's learned about Snoke. Kylo is listening in through the Force, and he dispatches ships to Kamino, even as he takes his own ship to confront Snoke at First Order headquarters. He sends a message to Rey, too, inviting her to join him there. He's often invited her to join him in the past, but this time Rey accepts, feeling that it's the will of the Force. While the others take the Falcon to go find help for the Republic, Rey and Finn take Jango's ship to go to the First Order. On Coruscant, Luke believes he's finally coming to understand the will of the Force. It created Anakin to use, not as a puppet, but as a person of destiny. By convincing him that the actions he took were the actions that he was meant to take. Anakin was no weak-minded vessel, but he was still willing to obey the will of the Force. Every action that he took in service of the Emperor was a rebellion against the Force. It drove him further into despair until he was reunited with his family and yielded once more to the will of the Force. Rey is the same, Luke tells Leia. She was born through the Force the way Anakin was. Her parents didn't understand. They sold her as much in an effort to get away from her as anything. Rey is the Force's effort to counteract Snoke and the Knights of Ren. At this point, Leia tells Luke what Rey discovered, that Snoke is a clone, and Luke immediately knows of whom. He tries to contact Rey to let her know that she's in danger, but Snoke is interfering, so Luke can't contact her. He knows there's only one way that he can reach her. He faces a Tasca of Ren in battle and allows himself to be killed. At the First Order headquarters, Kylo and Rey stand before Snoke and the remaining knights and ask him if it's true that he's a clone. Snoke speaks in Palpatine's voice, saying that clones are empty vessels if they're grown too quickly, that they have no minds or even wills of their own. And that's why they were so easy for Palpatine's apprentice, Darth Maul, to control them so long ago. But Palpatine took it a step further by creating a clone for his Force Ghost to inhabit, a vessel that would allow him to cheat death, to cheat the will of the Force. Neither Kylo nor Rey knows what to make of this. Meanwhile, back on Coruscant, Tasca is now battling Leia, who kills her and then Phasma, turning the tide of the battle on the ground. In space, the Falcon arrives, with Lando piloting it with Chewie at his side, Poe and Rose in the gun turrets. And they have more ships from the New Republic fleet at their backs, having been able to contact them and let them know of the siege. The battle is now a much more even fight. At First Order headquarters, Kylo receives a vision from Anakin's ghost about his destiny, about his legacy. Anakin tells him, "I never got a chance to save my mother, but you still have a chance to save yours." Kylo knows even if he wants to help Rey and Finn fight, Snoke and the Knights of Ren are too powerful. But then Luke's Force Ghost appears and immobilizes Snoke, at which point Kylo, Rey, and Finn fight the Knights of Ren. Finn is cut down. Kylo is cut down. But Rey is able to fight on, eventually facing Snoke himself one-on-one. Luke's ghost cannot hold out against the power of Palpatine, and Snoke breaks free, fighting back against Rey and almost defeating her, until Kylo's own Force Ghost appears and immobilizes him again, allowing Rey to take the killing stroke. Rey takes Kylo's and Finn's bodies to the ship so she can take them back to Coruscant, where the battle is now over and the First Order has agreed to a ceasefire. Hux withdraws, and Rey, Leia, Amidala, Poe, Rose, Chewie, and Lando mourn their losses. Rey asks Leia what will become of the Jedi now. Leia tells her, "The Jedi of the Old Republic tried too hard to control the Force, and Luke was controlled too much by the Force. The fate of the Jedi will be decided by how much they are able to balance not light and dark, but destiny with free will." The movie ends with them standing by the old Jedi temple, finally ready to rebuild. And that's my Jedi fanfic. That's my Star Wars saga, 1 through 9. I hope you enjoyed it. It was actually a re-recording of a podcast that I did last month. Hope you can check out my podcast, Stephen Talks. It's available on pretty much all podcasting platforms. Also, be sure to check out my original fiction, stuff that's not based on what other people have written. You can find links to it on the homepage of my website. It's available on all e-platforms. Be sure to leave a rating and a review on whatever you listen to or watch or read, and let me know what you think of it all. Thank you for listening.